This is Glenn Gould, and this program is called The Idea of North. I've long been intrigued by that incredible tapestry of tundra and taiga which constitutes the Arctic and subarctic of our country. I've read about it.
You know, it's always seemed to me that when that first person heard that second person's voice by virtue of a crystal set or whatever it was heard on, that they had not only the most unique experience of music in the sense of voice as sound, obviously, but that they had the one true approach to radio. They were able to get at something quite special, which I think in the intervening 40, 50 years since those crystal set days, we've managed very handily to lose. And it was not for, in many cases, the things that I think it really is for. It was for that original human contact, that incredible spine-tingling sense of awareness of some other human voice and persona. One of the first things that I did was a program called The Idea of North, which was a program that meant a great deal to me because in addition to the fact that it allowed a certain amount of experimentation with radio in a direction that's not been tried before as far as I know, it was about the North, and the North does mean something very special to me. I've not really been north because I don't fly, and if you don't fly, you can't get to the nice places. You can't get to Ellesmere Island or Baffinland or Exel-Heiberg or any of those spots. But even by train or by car, you can get to Dawson City and you can get to Fort Churchill, Manitoba, and so forth and so on. And I have managed to get to some of these places and found there some rather extraordinary human beings, people who have a rather fascinating approach to life, people who have gone north not simply because it offered time and a half pay or because they had to escape from something inside themselves that was eating at them and making urban life untenable, because they really had something to find out about themselves. They wanted to make inquiries about themselves. The prologue, which gets us into the program proper, is a sort of trio sonata. Three of the characters are concerned: a nurse, a sociologist, and our Ottawa man. And they talk at one point in consort. The nurse begins, the sociologist interrupts her and gradually climbs to a point of dynamic ascendancy, crosses over her line. She becomes his accompaniment, his continuo, as Johann Sebastian Bach would have said. Then the Ottawa man interrupts both of them and climbs to a still greater dynamic level. And it was planned as a sequence which would be a long crescendo and a very long diminuendo. It was, in fact, planned out as a piece of musical strategy.
I always think of the long summer nights when the snow had melted, the lakes were open, and the geese and ducks had started to fly home. During that time, the sun would set, but when there was still the last shimmer in the sky, I would walk out to one of those lakes and watch those ducks and geese just fly around peacefully or sitting on the
I remember one of the great moments of my youth. I was practicing a fugue by Mozart. It was a fugue in C major. It's a very broad and diatonic and endlessly sequential sort of fugue. And as I was practicing this, our housekeeper turned on a vacuum cleaner about 3 or 4 feet away from the piano. And this was done, I think, to annoy me more than anything else, because she knew, I think, that I didn't sort of like that kind of thing. Nevertheless, on this occasion, suddenly I decided I did like it, so much, in fact, that when it was shut off, I went back and turned it on, thereby wearing a hole in the rug, and kept on practicing this same Mozart fugue for some minutes with the sound of the vacuum cleaner in the background. And it was the most extraordinary phenomenon, as though you had been swimming and had your ears plugged with water, and then shook your head from side to side, singing at the same time. And there was an extraordinary sense of every note in this particular Mozart fugue being antiqued, as though you were playing it on a very, very ancient instrument, which I was not. It was quite a contemporary piano at the time. And it took on a characteristic, it took on a halo, it took on a sense of resonance, it took on a sense of not being quite there. And to this absentness that the Mozart fugue now had, fighting through toward it, out of this great surround of the vacuum cleaner, one could add on all sorts of idealistic ramifications. I could see it ideally, I could visualize it under my fingers. And I still very often, if I want to have a strong tactile affirmation of a score, I will still put a television set beside the piano, or have even a radio going, or 2 radios going at the same time. And I'm not all that much concerned in listening to what's on the radio at that moment. I do listen, and if there's an important news bulletin, I will likely take it in. But I'm mainly concerned with not listening to myself, in such a way as to preclude doing other imaginative things with the structure that I'm trying to hew out of some manuscript skeleton. And if that happens, you are incredibly free. You can have a tremendous autonomy to a sense of license, really, to change that work, to modify it to your own specifications rather than to the built-in limitations which you have as well. The moment you become trapped by the notion of a certain tactile resistance, the moment you become concerned with the idea that a certain octave passage is difficult to play, there's very little that you can do thereafter to escape it. It'll always be, to some extent, the stuff of your nightmares. You can't really get away from it. If, on the other hand, it doesn't quite exist for you, if it's not allowed to exist by virtue of the fact that you drown it out, that you surround it with so many things, that it's simply one tantalizing distraction among many, it can never assume those gigantic proportions in your imagination. That's why I think that the whole idea of doing things which seem honorably difficult is quite wrong. The whole idea of approaching music by virtue of the concert experience, because that happens to be the tried and true and certainly trying way to make music, is completely wrong. I think one should approach music with vacuum cleaners all around one. 221 years ago this month, one of Central Europe's more celebrated Kapellmeisters, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, wangled from his employer an invitation for his aging father to visit the court at which he served. A little lower, the employer in question was King Frederick the Great, himself a composer of distinction and as the reigning flute fanatic of the day.
I suppose that I would like, as a writer, to bring musical ideas to bear on the techniques of writing. I've always been fascinated with the metrical things that one can do with the human voice, both writing for it and editing it in terms of the documentaries that I prepare.
But understandably, in view of the theme the king provided, not entirely to his own satisfaction. Once home in Leipzig, and over with it, he set about saving...
That's why I guess I end up in a recording room doing about the most futile thing anyone can do, conducting the spoken human voice already in the can. One can't change its cadence, but one can change one's own reaction to its cadence and gain ideas from its cadence and prepare the next cadence of the next human voice. And that's why I find radio documentary especially so very fascinating, because one can make, well, it sounds pompous and I don't mean it to, but one can make a statement about the human condition by virtue of the way in which you can define it through using the human voice.